Hello, Yakri here with another Warframe video. This time I want to talk about gas and electric damage in particular. Mostly gas damage. Electric is good for the same reason but to a lesser extent than gas damage is. Now, the reason I want to talk about these damage types in particular is because people have a tendency to discount the value of these procs. I'm not really sure why, but I guess it's a common misconception that they aren't very good. Now, if you're modding certain types of weapons, like the twin Grakatas, they really aren't very good. But on the right kind of weapon, which probably means an elemental damage weapon that involves one of their base damage types, so that is electric, toxic, or fire, then these procs are quite good. And in particular, it has to be a high damage weapon. Some more high fire rate weapons can work alright as well, because largely we're going to be talking about toxic procs, and they do stack together. But it isn't super effective with like a machine gun or something that's going to apply a relatively small proc. Now, the reason is because you can do this. Hopefully, I've got RNG on my side because it's not. I won't always get the right proc. Alright, there we go. Yeah. Kill a whole group of enemies. I only hit 2 of them with my weapon, but gas damage deals damage in a 5-meter burst when it procs as an initial proc of damage, and I believe that is toxic, and then it applies a toxic proc. And it's a better toxic proc than toxic applies, which is weird. There's a whole thing about how gas damage works and how it applies damage that makes it particularly good, and I will link a video from someone else explaining that in the video description that I thought was reasonably good. I don't really want to get into it because it's pretty complicated and annoying to talk about, I guess. But you know, if you want the explanation, it's going to be in the description. And more into the story, or the moral of the story is, it deals a lot of damage in an area of effect. Now, here's the other thing: is when you shoot through 2 enemies like this, right, with any weapon, if you have punch through, there's a chance to proc on the first enemy. There's also a chance to proc on the second enemy, right, when you punch through with your shots. So you can do something, especially when you have a lot of multi-shot and a high status chance, where you shoot through one enemy, right, and you proc a gas cloud. Now that's 5-meter radius, so it's going to hit these guys when they're standing this far apart, which obviously outside of the simulacrum doesn't happen as often, but you get groups of enemies in game. I'm sure you've seen that happen before. What happens is that the second enemy who gets hit can also proc a toxic cloud. Now, if it's diagonal like this, they won't both hit each other, but if you shoot 2 enemies back to back and you don't actually kill them both, the gas cloud from this guy here is going to hit this guy here, and he's going to hit the guy in front of him with his gas cloud. So you can actually double up your damage, for at least the damage from the proc, right, in that way. And since the proc damage is bonus damage, right? On top of the damage you're dealing with your gun, you end up heavily doubling up your damage with your weapon, whatever weapon you're using that you've modded this for. The Lanka is a particularly good weapon with it. I don't have any others handy to demonstrate this with, but any weapon with a decent amount of status and a high damage per hit that you want to put punch through on or has innate punch through will work for this. IPS weapons will work as well, but it's less good because it's less reliable, right? There's a chance that you will proc slash or puncture or impact, and you don't want to proc those. You want to proc gas or electric. Now, why electric? Electric, you've probably seen it spark on. Let's see if I can get an electric proc. Gas, I'm just going to kill the whole group with this, aren't I? Maybe I can get lucky, and there's an electric proc. So the electric proc does much less damage than gas. I wouldn't necessarily spec for it specifically, but versus very low-level enemies, the electric proc can be enough to actually kill the whole crowd. Like if you're going through low-level missions and you want some extra utility to really clear out crowds of enemies, then it's a good idea. Because the electric proc, just because of how the actual proc damage is calculated, it ends up being quite a bit lower than the gas proc. And I've also focused on gas for the reason that gas is going to be higher anyway. But it does share the damage in a 5-meter radius, the electricity chains between them. But in either case, the proc is going to deal less damage than your initial weapon damage, right? It should, at least. I believe if you have a toxic weapon, well, you can get close to dealing your entire base damage. I think depending on how much you have to add in the fire, so that doesn't get added to the toxic proc. So yeah, it's never gonna be quite your whole weapon damage, I believe, but you can get pretty close to it and end up dealing a lot of damage. The electric proc is the same deal, but it's gonna deal even less damage. And so versus high level enemies, these guys, when I did one time manage to get an electric proc, luckily, and I think that was a toxic proc there. It only dealt like 10% of their HP, right, spread out to the other units. The thing is that if you're shooting like level 40 enemies, 10% of these level 80 bombards is going to kill a level 40 enemy. So that's what I'm talking about with that. So yeah, I think that pretty much covers it. Electric is in fact relatively not good in high level missions. Gas, however, is on the right kind of weapon. It remains effective into pretty high tiers. Eventually, you'd rather have like corrosive and something else like corrosive and would be heat probably on this weapon, or most other weapons, something similar to that, because gas as a damage type is not very good. It's just the fact that it does not double damage. Is it double damage? Almost double damage to your target, more than you would with your weapon's base damage, because of the dot on the proc. And so it's not quite as good as Slash, but almost. And Slash, of course, ignores armor, making it... I guess it's not almost as good as Slash. It's almost as good as Slash if the enemies already don't have armor. Yeah, so it adds a lot of free damage to your attack, and it does it in an AoE. So if your weapon doesn't normally have AoE, you end up dealing a huge amount of additional net damage. And in fact, even if it takes you 2 shots to kill an enemy instead of 1 because of this reduced damage, if you're killing like 4 guys in a crowd instead of just 1 guy, that it is worth it. So I thought I'd just do a little explanation of that, because I saw a post earlier where someone was talking about it and they're like, oh, this isn't any good. But niches, they have niches. I wouldn't use it 100% of the time, but especially if you prefer more powerful weapons, you have some really, tweaked out weapons that you're running through like level 60 star map missions in or something, then this is very, very nice status effect to have when you're doing a lot of overkill damage. All right, so that pretty much covers it. I'll talk to you all next time.